Okay, lead. What is lead? Lead is a pretty dense element, and it's very abundant. It's very, very abundant. So lead is a very abundant metal noted for its high density and ability to bend. Because of its density and availability, lead has been added to countless products over human history. Lead has been used in piping, gasoline, paint, and ammunition, among other applications. I'm going to jump through. You guys know that you have to copy all of the information that's in the white on the white background. Copy, 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 copy. And then we get to the original content. I'm going to tell you the original content right now up front so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm expecting for you guys to do to get all your points. The first thing you got to do is show me that you know how to use Google Drive by sharing a folder. And I've shared a folder right here. And in this folder, I've included a bunch of pictures for the next exercise. So you will have to include that Google Drive folder. And in that, you will be taking some measurements of an object. And this object, you're going to select it. But because lead is dense, we're going to be talking about density. And I want you guys to figure out how to calculate density. Do you guys know how to calculate density? It's mass divided by volume. So that means that you're going to have to record mass and you're going to have to record volume. How do you find volume? Well, there's some different methods, and I'll cover it more extensively. But you could just measure out an easy shape, like, say, a rectangular prism. And do you guys remember how to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism? Length times width times height. That's easy peasy. If it's a little bit more complicated, like, say, a water bottle. A water bottle is not a prism anymore. That, if anything, I approximated it as a cylinder, a cone, and then another cylinder on top. So I would find the volume by adding up those shapes, and I did, and I got this volume. And sometimes you might pick an object that you can't find it using geometric means, and you would use the displacement method. In fact, the most accurate way to measure body fat, if you're a high performance athlete and they're trying to figure out what your body fat percentage is, what they'll do is something called a DEXA scan. They'll submerge you in water and they'll see how much volume that you take up. And then they're going to calculate that based off of how heavy you are and how much volume you have, because fat is less dense than bone or metal, so they can calculate your approximate body fat percentage. So that's the displacement method is one way that you can find volume. Then you're going to use Google Drawing to actually calculate the density of your object with some scratch paper online. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. It's a little loud. Oh no, I hope it wasn't recording desktop audio. No, it wasn't. So Google Drawing, here's a Google Drawing. Have you guys been seeing Mr. Moreno use this tablet to write things with like the significant figures? Yeah, so I'm a big advocate of that. I like that. But you guys should be able to write out numbers online somehow, like scratch paper. And Google Draw allows you to do that. So I've taken pictures of the dimensions and I calculated the volume by multiplying it. And then I calculated the density by taking the mass and dividing by volume. And I wrote it all in here in a Google Drawing. Okay, so you guys will also do that. Finally, I want you guys to use Google Trends. Have any of you guys used Google Trends before? Okay, so maybe you might be wondering, hey, how popular is something? Who's more popular, Drake or Kanye? Who's more popular, Drake or Kanye? If I asked you guys, could you tell me? Kanye, you think? I mean, some kids will say Drake. Is there any way we can find an objective, correct answer? Who is more popular? Google. Okay, people are gonna when people are interested in something, aren't they usually gonna Google it? So Google Trends actually offers you the opportunity to see how frequently certain search terms are used. And you can see that based off of time and in comparison to other terms. So you're going to use Google Trends to identify the popularity of some social movements. Here's one that I used for BLM. Over the course of 20 years, I wanted to know how popular was the BLM as a term that was searched for. And it had some spikes, but those were identified as other things. And then it had a huge spike in popularity in June of 2020. June. I wonder why. So that's one thing that you're going to use Google Trends with. You're also going to use Google Trends to compare search terms. So, for example, here's a comparison between those rappers over the course of 5 years. Who is more popular? Kanye, Drake, or Kendrick? Who is the most popular? Technically, actually, the most popular was Drake. Drake around, looks like December 20, or no, it looks like early 2018? May 2018, probably when he released an album. Kanye's had spikes of popularity. Look at this one right here. Whose album was more popular, Kanye or Drake? Looking at the data right here. It looks like Donda was more popular because Kanye had more search results in this last period than Drake. You know who has basically no search results from anymore? Kendrick. Nobody's searching Kendrick anymore. He had a good run in April of 2017, probably because he released the album. He was telling people to sit down. Not so much anymore. So that's what you guys are going to be using Google Trends for. I also compared some video games because Fortnite was all anybody could talk about a few years ago. Every kid, Fortnite this, Fortnite that. You play Fortnite? Let's drop. Let's go. Let's go. It was like, okay, shoot. Fine. I'll play Fortnite. I played it. I actually played it with some students. It was fun. But you had all those people that were like, Fortnite's trash. It's all about Apex. But then you actually look, was Apex anywhere near as popular as Fortnite ever? Nope. Nope. And then people are like, both those are trash. It's all about Valorant. And you look and you're like, well, technically, no, Valorant wasn't even that popular. Yeah, it was close at one point. Like right when it first dropped, it was about a third as popular as Fortnite. Valorant's blue here. Fortnite is red. But look how popular Fortnite is now. Nobody cares about it. Nobody looks at it. Wah, wah. Nobody's playing it. Nobody cares. It's trash. Just kidding. I don't know. If you like it still, that's cool. I like plenty of things that aren't that popular. Yeah, you shouldn't define how much you like something based off its popularity anyways. But you should be able to identify those things using Google Trends. So that's what you have to do for your content. Let me go through and talk about the rest of lead. You guys know you guys have to copy this stuff over. Let me lecture on it. So we have this bottle of lead in the back. We do have some lead. But for centuries, we've known that lead is dangerous. It's a neurotoxin. It has severe impacts on brain health. Why do we use it? Well, one reason we use it is because it's really dense. If you go to P-table, which is our periodic table online, P-table, you can sort all of these elements various ways, but one way you can sort is different characteristics, and one is density. And if you look at the density, there's some really dense elements, like platinum is super dense. Gold is pretty dense. Lead is pretty dense. It's pretty dense. 11,340. That's pretty dense. And when something is dense, it means there's a lot of particles packed together tightly. And that can convey some sort of useful attributes to that element. And that's one reason why we use lead, is because it can make some strong pipes. Lead is also atomically stable, which means that all of the elements are breaking down constantly. They're constantly breaking down. And when these elements break down, they have to break down into different elements. And I believe that lead is one of the few elements that most of the other elements will start to break down into. Iron is the most stable, I believe, and most elements will tend towards the iron curve. But what this means is that the amount of lead in the solar system has actually gone up over time. So it's just really abundant. There's a lot of it. This is the density triangle. This density triangle, you guys will use this probably in physics as well. This triangle is showing that if you wanted to find density, it's mass divided by volume. If you wanted to find volume, it's mass divided by density. And if you wanted to find mass, it would be density times volume. That's what that triangle means. And you'll also use this triangle for forces in physics. So that's what that's about. These slides are just showing that the amount of lead in the crust, in the continental crust, where we get most of our minerals from and all of our building supplies, lots of lead, lots of lead. So that's why we used it. We just had a lot of it. PB, was anybody wondering where the heck that comes from? PB, well, that's PVC. That's polyvinyl chloride. That's something slightly different. Well, very different. PB. PB stands for the word plumum. Plumum. Maybe you wondering plumum. That looks like something. That looks like a word. And yeah, it's plumbing. The English word for plumbing is derived from that, from plumum. Because there was so much lead available and it bent really easily and it was heavy, it was used in pipes. The ancient Romans used so much lead in their piping that they actually adopted the word plumum, which was originally intended for lead. They adopted that to mean waterworks. So anybody who worked on the waterworks, anybody who was working with water, was then called a plumber because they were dealing with so much lead. So do you guys know any plumbers? You guys don't know any plumbers? I'm sure you guys know some plumbers. Who's that plumber with the red hat? Oh yeah, you guys know some plumbers at least. Do you know plumbers IRL? Anybody know any plumbers IRL? Yeah? Oh, you do, Kev? Oh, your brother's a plumber? Nice. Plumbers can make really good money if they're unionized. No, that's good. It's good. They make some good money. I think it's a great job. I think everybody should be somewhat familiar with plumbing. Like you should be able to replace a toilet. It's really not that difficult. Or fix a toilet. Okay, how long have we known that lead is bad? For a pretty long time. Pretty long time. Many ancient societies were kind of aware of it. So the Romans used lead. Did they know it was dangerous? Yeah. Well, maybe they just found out about it at the end. Not really, because the ancient Greeks were kind of also aware of it. Well, the ancient Chinese predated the Greeks. Did they know about it? Yeah, they also kind of knew it was dangerous. So we have all these ancient civilizations that knew it was dangerous and they continue to use it. That doesn't seem very smart to me. And do you know what another term or another definition of dense is? What's it say here? Definition of dense. That's one of them. If something is very dense, it's very closely compacted, so a lot of stuff. But what's the other informal meaning? Stupid. So if somebody calls you dense, that's an insult. They're calling you stupid. But in the case of these civilizations that used lead, even though they knew they were dangerous, I would say that was a pretty dense move on their part. Like, come on, man. You guys know that this stuff is bad. Why are you using it? So let's go through the list. The ancient Romans, did they know about the dangers of lead? Yeah, they did. They did. This picture right here, do you guys know who this is? This is a famous picture from Goya. It's called Saturn Devouring His Son. Saturn Devouring His Son. Let's see if I can find a better picture of Saturn devouring his son. Here it is. So do you know who Saturn is? He's a god. Do you know whose parent he is? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's Zeus's dad. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, they're all brothers, right? And sister, because Hera. Uh, so, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly from my classics class, I believe that there was a story that Saturn was told that he was going to be overthrown by one of his youngsters, one of his children. So his response to that was, "I'm not going to be taken over. I'm just going to eat all my kids." Yum yum yum. And here's one of those pictures. It's actually a pretty terrifying picture, but it is famous. Here's him chomping down on one of his kids. Uh, he didn't catch Zeus. Zeus ended up coming back to Olympia and taking over and putting an end to Saturn. So no bueno for that. But um, they knew that was dangerous. They knew lead was dangerous because they said that lead was the father of all metals. So the deity they associated with was Saturn. And if you had a disease that was a disease that was consistent with the symptoms of lead poisoning, they said that was a Saturnine disease. So they were aware. They were aware that lead was dangerous. They knew that it was dangerous, but they still used it. Dummies. I don't know why they did it. Or maybe similar to the modern world, maybe only a few people knew about it and they took advantage of that power and they were exploiting other people. Maybe. The ancient Greeks, did the Greeks know about the dangers of lead? Yeah, they knew too. They knew too. The Romans jacked a lot of stuff from the Greeks, including most of their gods. So, does anybody know the Greek equivalent to Saturn? Kronos. Yeah, he's he's the dad. He is the dad because he's the dad of Zeus and Hera and Poseidon and Hades, like I mentioned. So they called him Kronos. Father time is Kronos. Also, I mean, Kronos is fine, I guess. He's not as bad as Saturn. Saturn was a mean guy. Um, but there was a Greek poet and physician who he knew that lead was bad. He wrote this in one of his famous works. In second place, consider the hateful brew compounded with gleaming, deadly white lead, whose fresh color is like milk, which foams all over when you milk it rich in the springtime into the deep pails. Over the victim's jaws and in the grooves of the gums is plastered an astringent froth, and the furrow of the tongue turns rough on either side, and the depth of the throat grows somewhat dry. And from this pernicious venom follows a dry retching and hawking, for this affliction is severe. Meanwhile, his spirit sickens, and he is worn out with mortal suffering. His body too grows chill, while sometimes his eyes behold strange illusions, or else drowses. Nor can he stir his limbs as heretofore, and he succumbs to the overwhelming fatigue. This is lead poisoning. So they knew about it. They knew about it. Maybe they didn't know about it till later. Yeah, probably not, because the Chinese, did the ancient Chinese know about it? Yeah, they knew about it too, but they still used it. Dummies. Um, in the in the East, they value pale skin. They bleach their skin all the time in the East. Yeah, China, various other Asian countries, Japan, Korea, India, they are all super hot on bleaching their skin. They all love bleach their skin. They love to be as pale and pasty as can be. You guys ever see like K-pop stars? They got super pale skin. They want to have that. They take products to bleach their skin. Why? Why do they do that? They think it's pretty. Why do they think pale skin is pretty? Why do they think pale skin is pretty? Do you know why? Because in the East, why, Eric? Absolutely. Eric is absolutely correct. We usually associate beauty with wealth. We associate beauty with wealth. If you're in an Eastern nation, like you're some Chinese guy who you're poor dude, you're a peasant, you're working the rice fields. You're out all day busting your butt, getting burnt by that skin, burnt by that sun, your skin just turns way dark and tan. So for them, they think, ooh, tan, you're poor. You should be like these rich people who stay inside all day. Versus the West, what do we like in the West? We love tans. Everybody's all about getting that suntan. If you can't get a suntan, get a spray tan. Use some bronzer. We love tanning. You know why? Because poor people in the West, they're stuck inside in an office building. They hate their life. Like me, I'm super pasty white, right? Because I'm stuck in this classroom all day. If I was super rich, I'd be chilling on my yacht somewhere, getting a suntan. But instead, I'm just a poor boy. So in the East, they value pale skin. In the West, we value tan. So back in the day, ancient Chinese, they used lead. They used lead to bleach their skin. Not very smart, especially since there's evidence that suggests that people knew that it was causing damage. In 1000 BC, in the Song dynasty and the Ming dynasty, there were tons of lung ailments that were associated with crushing lead rocks and getting those symptoms. There was a alchemist, and alchemy is basically like magic chemistry. It's not real, but still, if you were a famous alchemist, you probably were pretty important. And this famous alchemist was saying lead, silver, copper, antimony, gold, these are all poisonous. And they were, and he knew. The ancient Egyptians were the only society way back when that actually didn't know about the dangers of lead. They used it as medicine even. Not very smart. They were using it a lot to make their ink dry faster for calligraphy because it's actually very heavy. It would sink and it would cause the ink to dry faster. So that's why they used it. But they didn't seem to be very aware of the fact that it was dangerous. So they're not as much of dummies as the ancient Chinese or the ancient Greeks or the ancient Romans. What causes lead toxicity? It's obviously dangerous. Why? Well, two reasons. It either binds to SH groups, which are called thiol groups, and these are important because these are in a lot of proteins. It causes problems there. It also competes with calcium. Calcium is an important mineral. It's an important ion for muscle contraction. If you have no calcium, you can't contract your muscles. Your nerve cells can't send out impulses or action potentials. It does a ton of damage, tons and tons of damage all across the body. You don't want to be consuming lead. It damages lipid production, which is membranes. It impairs heme biosynthesis, and heme is an important part of blood, like hemoglobin. And it destroys mitochondria. And what are mitochondria? The powerhouse of the cell. Love hearing it. Love hearing it. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Kevin. The physiological symptoms that manifest from lead toxicity affect nearly every part of the body. So we knew it was dangerous, right? All these ancient societies know it's dangerous. Obviously, we wouldn't use it in the U.S., right? Right? Nah, we did, because we're just as dumb. We didn't ban lead in paint until 1978. They used lead in paint for hundreds of years. They just poured it in. Why? It made it more dense so it would dry faster. It had a nice color to it. Like, let's just keep adding this lead in all our paint. Here's the problem. When that paint chips away, well, it falls to the ground, right? You know who will eat things off the ground? Pets and babies love to eat things off the ground. My baby's a dummy. He'll eat anything off the ground. Most babies will do that because they're dummies. They're babies. If babies eat paint chips that are loaded with lead, if you live in a very, very old house that was built before 1978, which is most of the houses in the valley and a lot of them in Silmar, if it hasn't been painted for a very long time, it's a possibility that it has lead paint. And if that paint chips and somebody eats those paint chips, they could be in for some problems. You have to call poison control immediately. So don't eat paint chips. And if you have a baby, don't let the baby anywhere near paint chips because you don't know if it's leaded paint. You think, okay, well, at least they banned it in 1978, right? They didn't completely ban it. 96, they were still adding lead to gasoline. They kept. Why? Why? Because it reduced engine knocking. For people that are aware of engines, the octane rating. The reason that you get 87 instead of 89 in an 87 motor is that if you give it 89, it's a little bit too rich and it causes knocking. It causes the pistons to go too far, and that does damage to the engine. So the lead reduced the knocking, it boosted octane ratings, it helped wear and tear on the valves. It just improved engine performance, and it did slightly, but then it released a bunch of lead vapors, and if you breathe lead in, not good. So the Environmental Protection Agency finally said, hey guys, we can't do this anymore. 96, it's banned. So it's been banned for about 25 years, so we don't have to deal with it as much, but you still got to be aware of it, because maybe we're going to be one of those societies that they look back and say, man, the US, those guys were dummies. Why do they use so much lead? We still use lead in some things. Solder. You guys have been seeing me do the soldering iron in the back, right? Well, the soldering iron, you guys will start to use that. I want you guys to learn how to solder in this class this semester. Soldering is really important. It's basically metal glue. And what it does is it helps bridge circuits that are broken. Like if you have a wire that's broken, you need electricity to go through, you got to bridge it somehow. So use solder. It's called solder. It sounds like this. Solder is a combination of metal elements that melts at a desired temperature and help conductivity. Solder now, you can get lead-free solder. People don't like lead-free solder. It doesn't flow as well. It doesn't work as well. So the solder most people use is made of 60% tin, that's what SN means, is tin, and 40% lead. It has a Prop 65 warning on it. Prop 65 is a proposition from California that said that they had to put a label on anything that was a known carcinogen. So have you guys ever seen the label that says, this product is known to the state of California to cause cancer? Or something in this area is known to the state of California to cause cancer? That's on pretty much everything. It's posted all over the place because almost everything causes cancer. But it is posted on solder as well. I do want you guys to know when you are soldering, you're going to have smoke that comes off the solder. Those aren't lead fumes. What that is rosin. Rosin is the stuff that's inside of the solder that helps it flow a little better. Rosin, yeah. Not resin, rosin. Though rosin can also mean something else as well. So it's still using lead. It's also used in car batteries. Has anybody replaced a car battery before? You've done it, Isaac? You've helped? Is it pretty heavy? Those car batteries are pretty heavy. You know why they're so heavy? Lead plates. There's a ton of lead plates inside. It's a lead acid battery that gets all of its electricity from a potential gradient between the lead and the acid that it's bathed in. But you got to be careful with how you dispose it because lead's dangerous. Huh? Throw it in the ocean? Do not throw it in the ocean. You will get fined heavily for that. Don't do that. Okay, leaded pipes. So you think, okay, lead's bad. And the Romans use a lot of lead. There's some people that speculate that the fall of Rome might have been because the aristocrats were going crazy because of all the lead. That's one of the speculations that some people had. Yeah. So do we use lead in our pipes anymore? Well, we try not to, but there's a lot of lead pipes in America still, and it's caused a lot of problems. Can't replace them all, and not very efficiently or fast. That's true, Dylan. So, Flint, Michigan switched their water source once, and it caused all these lead pipes that had all this water running from them. It caused them to start to degrade. Where did the lead go? Into the water. It caused a water crisis. This was the tap water people were pulling out of their tap. Could you imagine turning on the water source and just pouring that out? That's foul. That's gross. People complain about the Sylmar High School water because sometimes they'll get it and it's a little white sometimes. If it's white, that's just carbon dioxide bubbles. That's totally fine. In fact, our Sylmar water is really good water. By quality, we have very, very good water. That's why I'll tell people if they're making noodles in my class, Just grab the water from the sink. It's actually very, very good water. I drink tons of tea with this water. I've, I, I'm a big advocate for our water. So people who freak out about our water, like, oh, you gotta have a fluoride filter. Get out of here. Our water's totally fine. You're crazy. But lead legitimately is a problem in Flint, Michigan. Have you guys heard about the Flint, Michigan water crisis? So in Flint, Michigan, they had this issue where they swapped the treatment and it just caused all of this lead. It was disgusting. And, well, it became a social issue because it's near Detroit. Detroit is lower socioeconomic status, they're a little bit poorer. Detroit has a very large black population. So they saw that most of these people that were dealing with this bad water were a particular minority, and they thought, this is messed up. Socially, this is messed up. We should change something. So there was some progress in response to that, and they have actually reduced levels. So I'm going to play this video, and that'll wrap it up. So let's see. And I'm going to pause the video because I'll get a DMCA warning.